So with this piece, this has an interesting story to it, and hopefully you get to see the final results. But so far you can see that it has a nice frame to it. I did some embellishments to my back plate, and you can also see that I have some dichroic glass in the center of my flower, which you may not be able to see as I bring it closer. You'll notice that the flower appears to be floating in the window. And what I did, this was my first experiment using resin, and so I used resin to capture this single flower. It's like a sunflower to me, and I filled the cavity with the resin so it looks like it's floating in that frame. So it really has turned out kind of interesting. The back is not so pretty because the resin leaked. I had used painter's tape to close off that gap as I was filling it. So the back is not as pretty. I've buffed most of it off, chipped it, buffed it, and it's a very smooth back, but it's not a very pretty back. However, you can still see my textures that I did in the original piece. This piece was originally, without these embellishments, I was working with this particular stone. Now, as you can see, that's the reason the stone is not there, because I forgot to fill the frame with my investment. So I fired my piece with the bezel silver, the sterling bezel, and of course it shrunk. Because of the shrinkage, there was no hope of getting that piece to fit. So I sat and pondered about it and decided, well, this piece actually is reminding me more and more of cattails. And I think I'm going to create a cattail piece to go with the stone, and remember to fill my frame before I fire. And this is all PMC3. So the stone will get its new project. So now, with what I've also done with the stone, with this piece, is I've actually added some color. And the color that I add is called Gilder's Paste. And with Gilder's Paste, this is the sandalwood. It's just like shoe polish, if anybody remembers what that looks like. And I use my thumb and I use my finger, and sometimes I'll get a brush and I'll just apply it. And I usually use some kind of a thinner, because as you'll notice, the paste itself can be a little cracked. So sometimes I'll just take my cool slip with my brush and just get a little area, and then I'm able to dab that onto the metal. I do like it to dry, so that then I can, sometimes I smooth it out when it's wet to give it more interesting effects, but this one I wanted it to dry so that I could see how it's going to turn out. So now what I'm going to try is buffing it up. And what I'm going to do is see how that takes the color and what it does for me. Okay, so I'm going to turn on my Dremel so it'll be a little noisy for a minute. Get this where I can use it. My hope is that just some of that color will be left. And I'm just using a radial brush right now. So I'm liking so far what's happening. That's good. I have enjoyed using color with my silver work. So you'll notice that most of the color is sticking into those edges, which is what I wanted. And I did a branch motif. So I'm pretty happy with that so far. I'm going to try a little bit more polishing. I love these polishing cloths. These come from Rio Grande. They're awesome. They, of course, are embedded with some great stuff. So what I'm going to do now is just kind of give it a little bit of a buff. And you'll see that I'm still getting some things to come up. I like these paths because they're small enough that you can get into some crooks and crannies with them. But I also like the finish that they leave. I don't know if you can see, but some of that shine is really coming out nice. So now the color is kind of a muted. And what I'm liking about the color now is that it really seems to pick up the iridescence of my center stone. That's dichroic glass. And then the silver is making its pop with a little bit of color hints in the background. Now, if I did this when the paste was still wet on the silver, I wouldn't get the depth. I like it dried, and then I can get that depth in there. So I am at the point now where I think this piece is ready. And I already buffed up the resin. It was interesting, the buff that I did on the back of this piece really cleared up the resin as well. Who knew? You can polish resin as well. So after months of consideration, trying to figure out how I wanted this piece to, or how I wanted to capture this piece, I think I did it. So we have my floating flower in my frame. We've got a little bit of color to add to the piece. This is going to make a stunning necklace. Thanks for watching.